here we go. Guys, first, this is Why is Clinton Afraid of the Green Berets? And this was Soldier of Fortune, June of '96. This is Soldier of Fortune, February of '96. The Resistor is a underground newspaper published by the Green Berets. Now it says here, when friends in the U.S. Army Special Forces told me 2 years ago they were planning to start an underground newspaper, I didn't give it much thought. Outlining their vision for a clandestine political newsletter, pro-constitutional, pro-capitalist, anti-United Nations, anti-communist, edited for the military's elite units, they solicited any advice I might offer as a journalist. I suggested they wait until retirement. It struck me as odd that any soldier wishing to publish a newspaper championing the U.S. Constitution would have to do so in secret. At least it was during off-duty hours and with government equipment or materials. Without government materials. After all, military servicemen members swear an oath to protect and defend the Constitution. But then I never imagined that Army Special Forces Command would task none other than Rambo, Command Sergeant Major William H. Rambo Jr. to be exact, to ferret out and chastise such defenders of the Founding Fathers' faith, or that a witch hunt would ensure to the careers of the innocent Green Berets would be sacrificed upon the altar of political correctness. Come on, cat, get. But anyway, these people started a magazine, the Resistor. Had inside scoops for the troops. Okay. Here's what the Resistor is about, people. Okay. So why does the U.S. Army's John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center in school, where he is highly regarded as an instructor, want to get rid of a 12-year-old veteran? Because Razor is a stand-up guy, is being shot down in President Bill Clinton's program of political correctness, which is gradually eliminating from the Green Beret ranks any trooper who does not share Clinton's one world vision that favors United Nations dominance over national sovereignty. Okay? He's just one of many. Okay? Now here's special award from Major General Harley Davis, former commander of the U.S. Army Special Forces Command. Now here's something that this guy says, and all of us should take note of this. Today, we are now Christian and Jew, black or white. We are now docile or extremist. We're either Republican or Democrat. We are silent or radical. But we are never Americans first. It's time we come out of our cocoons and cast aside our prejudice. We are all Americans, and being an American should be an absolute common ground. We have effectively surrendered much of our sovereignty already to a world body to which the Constitution is nothing but a vain expression of human idealism. He told the Congressional News Conference, the United States Constitution is not the rule and guide of government to the rest of the world. Don't entrust your children's future to an organization that believes rights evolve from the state. Do not surrender the final means we have to preserve our nation. Do not surrender our military. The New World Order is not the national evolution of the natural state. It is a chorus of cries to redistribute our culture, international or intellectual, economic, and military wealth into the hands of a few under the false premises. The New World Order is not new at all. World government represents a godless infrastructure for tyranny. Our founding fathers and mothers would be absolutely horrified to see what we've learned, that we've learned nothing and squandered everything. Michael New and Ed Rasner are hardly alone. While there is no reliable way to absolutely qualify the extent of opposition to active duty troops in the UN service, more and more troops, particularly among the elite units like the Special Forces, are speaking out and getting out. Interviews with longtime Special Forces troops indicate. There's also less subjective indications that opposition to the UN service is widespread, especially when the service includes command by a former military officer who has not sworn an oath to protect and defend the United States Constitution. This just goes on and on, people. The New World Order is not new at all. World government represents a godless infrastructure of tyranny. I gotta see if I got anything else underlined here. But why I wanted you to know about this underground newspaper called the Resistor is because I'm bringing you up to something else here. I noticed the other day they had a thing in there about Afghans that our troops over there were under Afghan rule, and it's really not quite the truth. It is, but it's not. They're under the United Nations. Okay, I hope this don't even have a date here, does it? No. Okay, this is the Resistor. Okay, Volume 6, Number 1. And why I brought this up is because I want you people to know out there what in the living hell is really going on. I mean, what we're doing is we are funding our own demise. That's what the heck we're doing. The United Nations is the greatest fraud in history. Its purpose is to destroy the United Nations. Congressman John E. Rankin. Okay. When I was a young officer in jet fighter flying missions in the Korean conflict, unknowingly under the command of a Soviet general of the United Nations Security Council, I would never understand how the enemy knew so much about us as broadcast almost daily over the communist radio in North Korea. Our wives' names, children's names, squadron commander, flight numbers, etc. The North Koreans knew we were coming, how many of us there were, what type of aircraft we were flying, and even the targets we were to hit. Later I realized that the naval and ground forces suffered the same fate that we did, especially our Army and Marine infantry troops. Our military operations have been forwarded by radio to the Soviet commander of the United Nations Security Council at the United Nations building in New York City for approval before our forces went into action against the North Koreans and the Red Chinese. The Soviet commander of the United Nations Security Council delayed the battle plans until he used the radios in the United Nations building in New York to relay all the battle planning information to Moscow, North Korea, and Red China. The enemy then contacted and relayed these same battle plans to their communist forces in the field. The enemy knew when to move from an area and when to attack our smaller fighting forces. They knew beforehand we were coming and how many of us there were. They knew everything about us all the time, 24 hours a day. I later found out that the same form of treason was used against our forces in Vietnam. All information regarding battle plans and any Vietnamese and every battle plan in Vietnam was given to the North Vietnamese, Soviet advisors, and Viet Cong troops in the field during the entire war. The enemy knew our every move all the time. Our troops were like sheep to the slaughter in both Korea and Vietnam. Like blind fools, we sent our combat plans to the enemy for approval. There is a standing joke among fighter pilots that Moscow had a foul on each and every one of us. How little did we really know? Every mission, every movement was compromised. General Walt, former commander of the United States Marine Corps, reflected upon this information in his book that was written in 1980. This book was never allowed to appear in any bookstore in the United States. During the Korean and Vietnam conflicts, thousands of our fighting men were mentally or physically incapacitated or because of treason. To this day, the Soviets or someone from one of their satellite countries are the only ones who can command the United Nations World Police Forces. Each and every one of us that served in Korea or Vietnam served under the total command of a Soviet general. Here are the names of the Soviets and the dates they served as Undersecretary of the Security Council of the United Nations. Thus, the highest military commander of all United Nations fighting forces anywhere in the world, including all military forces of the United States. These names and information was obtained by the United Nations yearbooks up through 1983. Later yearbooks were not available. All listings are Soviet generals holding the office of Undersecretary for the Security and Political Affairs. Now you look here, guys, 1946, 1949. 1949, 1953. 1953, 1954. 58 to 59, 1960 to 62. 62 to 63, goes on down through here, guys. Okay, the post for political and security affairs traditionally has been held by Soviet national. Is senior advisor to the Secretary General, New York Times, 1963. Okay. Yes. Okay. Okay. During the Korean Police Action, Lieutenant General, whatever, received all his military information and troop movements from all of United Nations forces in Korea directly from his superior. Okay. All battle plans had to be approved by this guy ahead of time. It was the traitor Harry Truman himself who refused to allow General MacArthur, the Supreme Commander of the United Nations forces in Korea, to bomb the bridges in Yala River, which every Chinese communist troop came across in hundreds of thousands and killed our soldiers. Truman and the Soviet general in charge of the United Nations totally handcuffed MacArthur in all instances. MacArthur was only in command of the fighting forces. He was only in command of the fighting forces in Korea, not in command of the United Nations position as Under Secretary of Security Council. A Soviet general had this position of power and authority over MacArthur and all the United Nations forces in Korea. Same was true for Vietnam. When MacArthur woke up to the treason of President Truman and the United Nations, he executed one of the greatest military performances ever ventured in modern warfare. He dangerously and magnificently military engagements and sea landings at Incheon in September 1950. Enabled his military forces to slaughter the communist forces, destroy their massive supply dumps, and put Red China and North Korea and their Soviet advisors on the run. In other words, MacArthur kicked some ass. MacArthur never asked permission from the United Nations Security Council. MacArthur handpicked close and loyal military officers in doing so, and they kept a tight lid on the entire operations. Originally, our forces were never to win any battles as planned by the Soviet generals and the United Nations, but MacArthur realized the treason and took positive action not only to save the lives of his fighting forces and destroy the enemy and their supply bunks, but also creating the turning point of the Korean War with his success at Incheon. Okay? He was removed. Okay? Now, I just want you people to know this kind of stuff, what's going on. Our forces, our military, is never under the command of Americans. And you can see by these actions that the stuff goes through the United Nations in New York, it's relayed to them, and you get your butt kicked and your sons and daughters are killed. Says here, the Vietnam conflict was also allowed to continue to weaken resistance of Americans against any type of war or fight against communism. To accept anything would be better in the minds of the masses than war, than having their sons killed, even if it meant merging with our enemy, even if it meant merging our entire government with that of the Soviet Union, as we are presently witnessing. Okay. Vietnam was never planned to be won, but instead were planned so big money could be made by all the bankers and their political lackeys who sit in a public office all over the United States and other governments of the world. Just keep that stuff in mind, people. I mean, I hear this stuff all the time about, things that's going on in the world, and you don't really understand because you don't get all the facts. That's why I wanted you to know the truth about the Korean War. And thanks for watching.